Well, hello and welcome to a very special edition of Inside. I should be greeting you with Namaste as well as Shalom because I'm coming right from the Mediterranean coast here in Tel Aviv in Israel on what is a very significant occasion indeed as far as trade ties between the two countries are concerned. Now, the Minister for Commerce and Industry in India, Mr. Piyush Goyal, is in Tel Aviv currently on his first bilateral visit to the country as a Commerce Minister. And why is this visit so significant? Well, he brings with him India's largest trade delegation to Israel. And I'm speaking very close to the hotel where he's, of course, met his counterparts, the Minister for Economy as well as the Minister for Finance in Israel. And all of them are, of course, currently negotiating the road ahead as far as the trade relationship between the two countries is concerned. Now, one narrative that has dominated Indo-Israeli ties is how closely the two countries are cooperating in the field of defense as well as counter-terrorism. But there's a lot more to this relationship than just that. The two countries are also collaborating when it comes to agritech, when it comes to cybersecurity, and of course information technology as well. They're also negotiating what will eventually turn out to be a free trade agreement. Now remember, in 2017, India's Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, visited Israel in what was the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to this country back then, and it was reciprocated by Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to India in 2018. Ties between India and Israel have gone through a serious recalibration over the years. Apart from the fact that both have a shared experience of being victims of and fighting terrorism as well as proxy wars in their respective neighborhoods, which has brought them closer in terms of their cooperation in defense as well as counter-terrorism, there is now a growing economic relationship that is rooted very much in complementarity. The numbers can certainly get better. From $200 million in trade in 1992, when diplomatic relations were established, merchandise trade reached a high of $10.77 billion excluding defense in 2022-23. However, since then there's been a decline. Bilateral trade stood at $6.53 billion in 2023-24 and it came down to $3.75 billion in 2024-25. Now this has largely been due to the security situation in West Asia and disruption of supply routes in what has been a very volatile neighborhood, particularly after the terror attacks in Israel by Hamas in October 2023. So what do India and Israel actually trade in? In the financial year 2025, India's exports to Israel were to the tune of almost $2.14 billion. Gems and jewelry accounted for the highest exports in terms of value, followed by engineering goods, electronic goods, organic and inorganic chemicals, as well as agricultural products. Israel's exports to India the same year stood at $1.6 billion. This largely included electrical machinery, pearls and precious stones, also arms and ammunition as well as parts and fertilizers. India enjoys a slight trade surplus with Israel. But both sides are determined that this figure, as far as bilateral trade is concerned, reach the $30 billion mark at the very least over the next 5 years. And to that end and much more, India's Union Minister for Commerce and Industry, Mr. Piyush Goyal, visited Israel between the 20th and the 23rd of November this year. He met Nir Barkat, the Israeli Minister for Economy and Industry in Tel Aviv, and on the very first day of the visit, the two sides agreed on the terms of reference for what will eventually be a free trade agreement. This was a news break that was first confirmed by Times Now shortly before the announcement.
Now, as far as the terms of reference are concerned, we can expect some clarity today. In fact, there's an announcement scheduled on the part of Mr. Goyal and his Israeli counterpart in a short while from now. And I'm just joining you from the hotel where those discussions are taking place as we speak. The terms of reference will essentially dictate how the negotiations vis-a-vis the FTA flow from here. Because the terms of reference will essentially decide what are the issues on the table as far as the FTA is concerned. What are some of the no-go areas as well as those areas where there can be a bit of give and take expected between the two sides. In fact, there's one announcement related to this expected in just a few minutes from now. As far as the final FTA is concerned, well, that might take some time because once the blueprint is prepared, only then can discussions begin.
We have followed up on the September signing of a bilateral investment agreement with the signing of the terms of reference, the first point before beginning negotiations for a free trade agreement. This will certainly, an FTA between these two countries will certainly be a stepping stone to greater trade in goods and services, encourage investment, provide stability and predictability to our economic relations, ease regulation, promote mutual recognition of professions, and help support the shared prosperity of both countries.
When I spoke to Neer Barkat, he described how the strategic relationship between India and Israel also complemented our economic priorities. The India-Middle Eastern Economic Corridor, which Israel is very keen to ensure that it passes through it, is part of that equation. That would also depend on how the Abraham Accords, which includes a series of agreements seeking to normalize Israel's relationship with other countries of the Middle East, shape up. My privilege to be speaking to Mr. Neer Barkat, the Minister for Economy and Industries here in Israel. Thank you very much for speaking to Times Now, sir. You've laid the foundations of an eventual FTA. I won't broach the question of a timeline at this juncture, given the fact that you've taken a major step already in that direction. Tell us about what it took to get to where we are currently.
Interesting. I was in India before the war, and I think that we're all busy with ourselves. India is busy with itself, and we're busy. And I think that December last year, in 24, I flew in to speak to Mr. Piyush Goyal, to the minister, and we realized that we have a huge opportunity. I think India is not just focused on itself. It's becoming a major global player, much more open to collaborate, and that's exactly what Israel wants from our side. So when we said, okay, if we want a good deal between the two countries, let's exchange missions. So I brought a big mission on the biggest ever coming from Israel in February. I think we're both surprised by the chemistry, by the quality of the discussions. And now there's a huge mission with the Minister Piyush Goyal coming here. It's actually the first big mission coming to Israel from the beginning of the war.
Yes.
Which we highly respect. So now we understand what we need to do. Some of the things we don't wait for the for a deal. We know how to move on fast and quickly, and the deal will follow. The team will start in phases. We're not waiting for a deadline of a deal. We're starting to develop the relationship.
You mentioned very briefly about the importance of the IMEC. There's also the I2U2 discussions that have taken place earlier as well. How do you see these arrangements actually complementing the growing economic collaboration between India and Israel?
Today, Israel is sort of an island, if you like. Okay, we import in and export in and out to us, but we're not a pathway. IMEC makes Israel part of the path, the global pathway, not just for containers, but for energy and information technology. And so IMEC has a strategically important thing for Israel. Okay, we're part of the network for a lot of pass-through. And I think that IMEC also cannot be successful before the expansion of the Abraham Accords. So there's a carrot there at the tail end of expanding the Abraham Accord. And the fact that Adani is a very smart Indian man, he bought the port of one of the ports of Haifa because he realized that once we have peace, and we will have peace with God's help, this is a great investment passing through Israel.
When I spoke to stakeholders from both sides in Tel Aviv, the impression that I gathered was that there was tremendous enthusiasm about the opportunities that this growing relationship offered for businesses on both sides.
Definitely say defense is a major connection and don't need to use our defense industries. Fortunately and unfortunately, fortunately it was a war that not just good product that proven itself in real-time war, but we have a lot to offer. India is very strong in the pharma sector. Israel as well, the Kuwait instead of being the president of perfect association. I'm the owner of one Israeli that filed with company that have a lot of suppliers and good friends against them now. It's not the suppliers, now they are friends in India. And so the pharma, the food industry benefit very much from Indian food industry as well. Metal, we have good connection and you can do quite a lot of transportation, smart cities. And of course, speaking about the high-tech brands, in Manufacturing Association, we have a United partnerships, hardware, software, and cyber. We are very strong in cyber and all this India is very spreading that. We have so wide range of opportunities that we will not finish this interview if you need to say all of them. But what is important to know that the potential is here. And the willingness of both sides are near, and but it can be double and triple as well. Defensive opportunity creating for India now. One to trade partner when it's the dialogue or and also trying to go more and more investment. That itself. But there is a much bigger opportunity out there. As India goes from the advanced factory, when it's in semiconductor, but in space, whether it's in medical devices, whether it's in electronics, there is a lot of technology that is available. It's like that. And then the very good R&D buying bank that we have. So it will be very interesting for Indian companies to see how they can in some of those. Yes. And I had a look section wires technology part of it. The second is India is sustainability very and also for some part Israel has been up some very strong. I think there's another one some partnership. There is work happening. But there's an opportunity to accelerate that. I think the fact that most countries are growing, and given that we have taken a good relationship, future trade could grow at a very, very high rate. I wouldn't be surprised over 10%.
One of the highlights of the Tel Aviv leg of the store was a visit to the Peres Center for Peace and Innovation. Named after one of Israel's nation builders, the former President and Prime Minister Shimon Peres, the center serves as a hub to showcase to the world Israel's path-breaking innovations in science, agriculture and defense, and the ecosystem that the country has successfully created to incubate and nurture entrepreneurship. Should we be surprised then that Israel is home to almost 50% of all startups in the Middle East, with almost 42 unicorns? Should we be surprised that the maker of the USB drive, Dov Moran, or Benny Landa, who revolutionized printing technology, are from Israel? Whether it's the Iron Dome anti-missile technology that has kept Israel secure, or innovations in drip irrigation technology as well as water resource management that has literally turned a desert green, well, the exchange of ideas and growth of trade between India and Israel therefore has opportunities when it comes to technology transfer as well. Well, what you're seeing right here is the Peres Center for Peace as well as Innovation. This is a very important landmark in Tel Aviv in Israel, and it's named after, well, a true nation builder as far as Israel is concerned, the former Prime Minister of Israel, the late Shimon Peres, who also served, of course, as the President of Israel as well. Now, this particular hub was actually established during his last years. He spent, in fact, working here for the last 3 years of his life after having retired from politics. It features presentations on the part of several entrepreneurs in Israel who have become poster boys and poster girls for entrepreneurs across the world, for having come up with a very creative, innovative idea that they've managed to market successfully and, of course, also transform lives in the process. Israel is known as a startup nation because people as young as 17 years old have actually become extremely successful entrepreneurs. So this is, of course, the backdrop of the Shimon Peres Center for Peace and Innovation right by the Mediterranean Sea here in Tel Aviv. Piyush Goyal also met CEOs from both India and Israel during his stay in Tel Aviv, followed by meetings with the Israeli Minister for Finance, Bezalel Smotrich, and the Minister for Agriculture, Avi Dikta. Now, after all those discussions concluded, there was, of course, a formal press conference where the terms of reference for an eventual FTA were released. Now, why this is such a significant step is because the red lines that both countries have drawn with respect to areas where the other country cannot encroach upon with respect to imports or exports, well, that's been decided. So Mr. Piyush Goyal was fairly categorical that there are certain issues and areas of cooperation that Israel is very sensitive about, that India will not necessarily decide to encroach upon. And likewise, there's also been an understanding on the part of Israel that when it comes to sectors such as agriculture, sectors such as dairy products, among others, Israel would not be intruding or competing in the Indian market, so that the welfare of our farmers are actually protected. Hot morning here in Israel, when a lot of people from in and around this area have actually congregated here just to get a lot of sunshine. This is the Dead Sea. This is water that contains enormous amounts of salt. So if you decide to take a dip here, then you'll invariably end up floating. Well, it's also very important now to in fact put the current set of negotiations that we're witnessing between India and Israel in context. Let me give you a bit of historical perspective here, because the state of Israel came into existence in 1948. India became independent in 1947. But it was only in 1992, when P.V. Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister of India, that full diplomatic relations between India and Israel were established. India recognized Israel in 1950 when Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru was our Prime Minister. But between 1950 and 1992, there were lots of back-channel negotiations between Indians and Israelis. However, it never quite reached the level of a full diplomatic relationship. And one just wonders if those 42 years were a serious case of missed opportunities between the two countries, because right now bilateral trade between India and Israel keeps fluctuating between $4 and $5 billion on a yearly basis. One just wonders if the scale and magnitude of that economic cooperation as well as trade ties would have been much greater had India and Israel established diplomatic ties much earlier in history. The scene shifted to Israel's capital of Jerusalem, one of the world's oldest cities. At the iconic King David Hotel, which is older than the modern state of Israel itself, one couldn't help but notice the walk of fame of visiting dignitaries from all over the world who have stayed here. And this includes Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his visit in 2017. I asked Piyush Goyal about the renewed focus and push that the relationship with Israel had received under the Modi-led dispensation. I was going through the manifestos of the Bharatiya Janata Sangh, your party's predecessor, all the way back to 1967. And in that election manifesto, the Bharatiya Janata Sangh had actually advocated for the full establishment of diplomatic ties with the state of Israel. Now, as we all know, it was in 1992 that the ties were fully established when Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister. So in your negotiations with your Israeli counterparts, did you ever get the sense that you're also making up for lost time and that you're also making up for certain missed opportunities from the past, which is why the relationship has blossomed to the extent that it has over the last 8 to 10 years?
Well, I think under Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, the ties between Israel and India really took off. And Mr. Arun Jaitley, the former Commerce Minister, had visited here. But the first Prime Minister to visit Israel has been Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2017. I'm probably the first Commerce Minister in the last 20 years to have visited Israel. It's a country with a lot of innovation, small country, but over the years they have converted every crisis into an opportunity, something that we see happening in India also. They've come up with very innovative products to help them increase their agriculture output with a small land base, very little water. They've done some wonderful work on health tech. The software industry here has been on a roll. On artificial intelligence, they've come up with groundbreaking technologies. And my sense is a partnership with the State of Israel will really help India get into the next phase of R&D, higher levels of innovation, and help our industry, help our economic growth take a faster trajectory.
Mr. Goyal, you've said this repeatedly, that every bilateral relationship has its own dynamic, every bilateral negotiation has its own dynamic. But now that you've actually charted the contours and the rubric in which the eventual FTA will be signed between India and Israel, you've identified the no-go areas or the certain Lakshman Rekhas or red lines that one can't cross. How smooth do you expect future negotiations with Israel to be compared to some of the other perhaps challenging negotiations that have been with respect to the EU or the United States for that matter?
Well, every negotiation has its own challenges. In every negotiation, one tries to address the mutual sensitivities of both nations. Even with my colleague minister, I had extensive discussions yesterday again, and we are meeting after a little time again just now to see how we can converge on low-hanging fruits, how we can ensure that we don't get down the path of sensitive issues for each other, which only delays decisions. And let's look at the benefit that our business circles on both sides can get. And I think this mutual respect and understanding that we have developed will help us at least decide on phase one of a free trade agreement quite quickly.
Well, right at the outset, I told you that this is a very special edition of Inside. One of the reasons for that is because I'm speaking to you now from one of the world's oldest cities. This is Jerusalem, more than 5,000 years old, and I'm speaking to you right from outside the Western Wall. It's a monument of enormous significance as far as the history of the city is concerned. We're not allowed to shoot inside, no photography or videography allowed during the occasion of Shabbat. So therefore, we're speaking to you from outside the precincts of the Western Wall right now, of huge significance to the Jewish community. The old city was occupied by Jordan during the 1948 Israeli War of Independence. But in 1967, in the Six-Day War, Israeli troops who emerged victorious captured the old city and brought the Western Wall, one of the most revered places of worship for Jews, under Israeli control. And this is the old city at night. In a city that is considered holy by Jews, Christians and Muslims, the Temple Mount is one of the most contested and sensitive sites in the world. It is the site of Solomon's first temple, destroyed by the Babylonians, and then the second temple brought down by the Romans. A site that was revered by the Jews. Well, in the 7th century, this became the third holiest place of worship in Islam when Caliph Abd al-Malik built the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Then came the Crusades in the 11th century that converted this into a church before it was reclaimed by Saladin a century later. Jerusalem lives and breathes history. But coming back to the present, Israel's President Yitzhak Herzog met Piyush Goyal at his residence.
Welcome, dear Minister. We are very honored to have you in Israel. As the President of Israel, I must tell you that the impact of India and the affection towards India and Israel is outstanding. And I have also had the pleasure and honor of meeting your Prime Minister a couple of times in recent years, and I hope to be able to meet your President soon. I think that the relations are excellent, but we can even upgrade them more, and I'm especially happy that you're here to have signed an MOU, which is so important on the economic level between the nations. So all I can say is now the sky's the limit. We have to work hard on it, but I think we are like-minded in so many things. So welcome and shalom, dear friend.
I do believe we are two strategic partners, two friends who can work together, whose economies complement each other. And having signed the terms of reference for a potential free trade agreement between Israel and India, I see tremendous possibilities for the innovation that Israel is famous for.
The residence of the Israeli president includes the busts of all his presidential predecessors, including Reuven Rivlin, who had visited India in 2016 ahead of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel a year later. President Herzog's father, Chaim Herzog, had himself served as the President of Israel between 1983 and 1993. It was in 1992, remember, that India and Israel formally established diplomatic ties. The visit would end, but not before Goyal met the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who is expected to make his second visit as Prime Minister to India in early 2026. Let's also speak of the emotional connect. India is home to around 5,000 Jews, but has no history of anti-Semitism. In fact, many Jewish refugees fleeing the Holocaust and organized persecution elsewhere found a safe home in India. Israel has backed India's fight against terrorism, including during Operation Sindoor, and Prime Minister Modi was among the first to speak to his counterpart, Prime Minister Netanyahu, after the 7th of October terror attack in Israel 2 years ago, to express his solidarity and voice his condemnation. As far as mobility today is concerned, many Indians have been working in Israel over the last couple of years in the infrastructure and construction sectors. The focus is also expected to shift to the mobility of skilled workers in the tech and services domains as well. So a brief but a very productive visit, and one that is part of a continued series of engagements in a relationship that today assumes multiple dimensions.